Well, folks, I have got a kind of bittersweet opportunity here to chat with a good friend of mine who I've gotten to know over the years, representing the 6th Congressional District in our nation's capital. It's Derek Kilmer. Derek, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
We are putting kind of a wrap on your time in DC, but it's not going to be a wrap for the amount of good work that you'll continue to do for folks in Washington State. And I just got to say, too, it's been wonderful getting to know you, not only virtually like these kind of conversations, but in person as well. We have done some pretty fun things together over the years, from the Alderbrook oyster eating challenges to the fjording crossings that happen. So you're out there and you're representing the people of the 6th district, and you've been doing it for 12 years now. So you've asked for the vote of the people, and they've given it to you every time you've asked. And that's let's just start with that. That's got to be a great feeling.
I've loved this work. There are people leaving Congress who are saying, good riddance. I hate this place. I'm not one of them. I've loved the opportunity to represent the place where I grew up, right? I grew up on the Olympic Peninsula and, was inspired to get into public service because of some of the challenges that we faced economically, and to be able to show up to work every day, working for people that I care a lot about, and trying to find wins for folks in our neck of the woods has just been the honor of a lifetime. So, and a lot of fun. To your point, like the cool thing about our district is, you know, uh, there are so many people doing so many great things, and trying to build community, whether it's at the 4th of July or whether it's at community festivals or whether it's work that the tribes are doing in our district, or economic efforts that folks are undertaking. Like it has kept me motivated every single day and excited to go to work every single day.
What's so wild about the 6th congressional district is just how broad it is, not only geographically, but broad and diverse in its citizenry. One of the main, I would say, anchors of the 6th is our veteran population and our military
Yeah.
presence that we have with the base and things like that, the shipyard. You're really into that, and for many years now have been doing all you can to help the veterans in our community not only receive the benefits that they have they've justly earned, but also in recognizing those veterans when it comes to pinning ceremonies
Yeah.
and things like that. That's got to be just great work for you.
It's um I just think if you serve this country, we ought to have your back. And the things that we've been able to do on that front for folks in our community has been really, you know, great stuff to get to work on. When I first got into office, I still remember getting invited to the community-based outpatient clinic in Bremerton, which had like mold issues and was just not fit for meeting the needs of veterans in our region. And I basically said, to my team, we either need to fix this or build a new facility, but it's just not right what veterans in our region are facing. And I don't know if you've been up there, but the new clinic in Silverdale is extraordinary. I mean, it is a modern facility. It's adequately staffed. It has more capacity to see more veterans. And that's one of the things I'm proudest of, because I just think, again, we got to make sure we're meeting people's health needs and that they don't have to schlep to Seattle or someplace else to get their needs met. To your point, half of our team in the district is caseworkers, and so a lot of the work that we've done has been helping vets get access to benefits that they've earned. And sometimes that's health stuff, sometimes that's we had a guy reach out to our office and he said, I got injured on a mission during the Vietnam War and I never got my Purple Heart, in part because his mission was classified. And he said, it helped me heal some of those wounds that folks can't see if I could get that Purple Heart. And we worked with him. And over a series of time, we got his mission declassified. And one of the coolest days I've had in this job was getting to pin a Purple Heart to that guy's chest. And, you know, the pinning ceremonies that we've had for Vietnam vets who, when they came home, often did not get the gratitude from their community that they earned, was that was a really important thing for me to be able to pull our community together to say thank you, better late than never, right? On behalf of our community. And so I've really valued that work, and certainly for veterans and for military families and for our military too. The largest employer in this district is the Naval Shipyard. They're about to undertake literally billions of dollars of investment at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, making sure that the table is adequately set for those investments to happen, which is important both from the standpoint of our national security, but also from the standpoint of, this is generations of jobs here in our region. Those investments, I believe, are going to happen. And, that's something that we've spent years on.
You have kind of always been public facing, whether your time with economic development locally or in Olympia, or even filling in some big shoes when you came into Congress from former Congressman Dix. And tell me a little bit about just what you have learned about our your constituents, our fellow citizens here, and how have you been able to take some of those lessons to DC? I know you've worked across the aisle for your whole time up there and have really worked with different subcommittees and groups like that to kind of show that there are more similarities than differences. But what are some of the kind of key backbone parts of us here in the sixth that you've been able to take with you, share, and grow
Yeah.
from?
I think the values that I grew up with on the Olympic Peninsula and what I've seen every day in this job is that, the boat moves best when people's oars are in the water rowing in the same direction. And that can be tough, right? Like the seas are pretty rocky, and it's hard enough to get where you want to go. And it's really hard when, as I see in Congress, right? Like 45% of the oars are rowing in one direction, 45% are rowing in the other direction, and 10% the oars are just out of the water beating everybody else over the head. And, so that becomes really difficult. And what I've seen in our region is just a willingness to roll up your sleeves, sort of check political agendas at the door and just get stuff done. I think about the Forest Collaborative that we formed in my first term in office, and that work continues. One of the things that bummed me out was when I was a candidate in 2012 was that the dialogue between the timber industry and the conservation community hadn't really improved in the 20 years since I'd graduated from Port Angeles High School. And so we took a risk. We pulled together the timber industry and the environmental community and some local leaders and basically said, is this working for anybody? Because right now it doesn't seem to be working for forest health and it doesn't seem to be working for economic health. Like, what if we try to do something different? And to the credit of those folks, they said, sure, let's try. And, if I'm honest with you, Jeff, like the first 6 months was mostly an exercise in trying to keep people in the room.
Right.
Then we actually did something that was really valuable. We took a field trip. We went out into the woods, and you had folks from the timber industry saying, if we could do this, right, like we could actually drive more benefit out of a timber sale. And here's some of the things that we do that we think are good for critters. And the environmental community chimed in and said, if you could do this, like it might be more helpful to critters. And it was a really good discussion. And then the next time we got together, one of the leaders from one of the environmental groups said, you know what? We want to help you guys harvest some more timber. And in fact, we've taken a vote and we're going to take part of our organization's budget and we're going to put it towards helping to hire a forester to supplement the work of the Forest Service. And I almost fell out of my chair because I was like, did I hear that? And we've now seen multiple projects out of that Forest Collaborative to supplement the work of the Forest Service. Now, I would like to see it happen at a at a faster speed and a greater scale, but you got to crawl before you walk and walk before you run. But I'm hopeful that we'll be running soon enough and see some broad scale work that could really be impactful both for forest health and for economic health. That only works if people are willing to roll up their sleeves and find common ground when they can. I visited a YMCA in our district, and it was kind of a bad news thing initially because they said, I thought they were inviting me to come talk about gymnasiums losing money during the pandemic. What they wanted to talk to me about was, arguments and fights breaking out at the Y over politics. But like in the spirit of our region, they basically said like, we want to take something bad and turn it into something good. And so they set up a new program called the Bridges of Hope Initiative to actually get people to bridge those divides and, hosting community conversations about stuff. And like, I don't think you see that everywhere. I think we are a unique region, like all the work around Hood Canal and Puget Sound recovery, right? Like, think about the coalition of tribes and business community and shellfish growers and county and municipal government leaders and state and federal and like the whole, and farmers and the whole, Noah's Ark of people who are on the boat, you know, like rowing in the same direction to try to say, hey, this is an extraordinary treasure for our region, important economically, important environmentally. Let's work together on this. You just don't see that everywhere. And so I feel very blessed to come from a place where we say, you know what, like we're not going to agree on everything, but we're going to try to work through our stuff and we're going to try to identify things where we want to get something done. And then let's go do it.
I know you have over the years too, in kind of that collaboration model, brought counterparts from the other side of the aisle, or even same party but different, completely different
Yeah.
swaths of districts, from very urban parts of the Northeast or very, ruby red parts of the South to come out to the Northwest and show off kind of what we have to offer in kind of that same model. Tell me a little bit, or one or two examples that you can think of uh, that have been the most rewarding parts of those DC interactions. You
Yeah.
talked about the pinning ceremonies here locally, kind of on the ground, but when you're in DC, what are some of those most rewarding connections?
Yeah, there's three that come to mind. When I got into this job, we made a strategic plan and it was focused on two things. One, and we can talk about it, creating more economic opportunity for more people in more places. And so a lot of the work that I've done has been focused on that. But the second piece was make government work better for everybody. And what I've tried to do is find common ground where I can. And and that can lead to interesting bedfellows and lead to getting some stuff done. So as an example, I co-chair a group in Congress called the Bipartisan Working Group, which is a dozen Democrats and a dozen Republicans who meet for breakfast every week when we're in DC. And it's a meeting in three parts. The first part of the meeting, we go around the room, and anybody who's working on something where they want to invite collaboration or co-sponsorship is given an opportunity to make a pitch. Second part of the meeting, we talk about what's going on in Congress that week or that month. And like those can be feisty conversations, right? If you're talking about healthcare or immigration or
Hmm.
taxes, right? People can have sharp elbows, but I'm increasingly of the belief that good democracy is a little bit like a good relationship, right? Like you're not going to agree with each other on everything, but you can't have every interaction turn into the Jerry Springer show. And then the third part of the meeting, we bring in an outside speaker to talk about some big hairy issue facing the country and how we might be able to find some common ground on it. And I cannot tell you the number of bills that I have either been a part of or that I've led that came out of that group. We sponsored the first bipartisan campaign finance reform bill in more than a decade because we invited a guy in to come and talk to us about the problems with the Federal Election Commission. So we ended up working together on a bill to reform the Federal Election Commission. We sponsored a bunch of the folks in that group worked with me to sponsor a bill called the Building Civic Bridges Act, focused specifically on this question of how do we bridge some of our divides? Because, I just don't, there was an NBC News poll that found that 70% of Americans agreed with the statement, we are now so divided, we're incapable of solving big problems. And like, on one hand, you go, well, I guess that's just life in 2024, and we're just not going to do anything big anymore. But like, I don't accept that. And so that's been an area of focus for me. That bipartisan working group has been a real pleasure to be a part of. Second, as you mentioned, I've done a number of exchanges where I've gone to someone's district, the district of one of my Republican colleagues, and then I invited them to mine. And I've had, Dan Newhouse from across the mountain, but I've also had, Steve Womack from Arkansas came to our district. And it was really interesting because, I went to his, I hung out in Arkansas and went and visited, the Walmart headquarters and, the biggest distribution center that you're ever going to see. And I visited, um, the University of Arkansas, and we did a town hall meeting with students at the University of Arkansas, which was very different than the town hall meeting he did with me in my district. And um, but I still remember, like, we went to the port of Tacoma, and the port did an amazing job of saying, like, here's the number of containers that come from Arkansas, come into our port, and go all over the world. And here's how many containers come into our port and then end up in Arkansas. And at the end of the meeting, he walks out and he goes, I don't know how you did it, Kilmer, but suddenly I care about freight mobility issues in the Puget Sound region. We went up Hurricane Ridge in Olympic National Park. And the Park Service did an amazing job of just briefing him on the maintenance backlog in the Park Service. And like on our way down the mountain, he was like, it's just not something I think about a lot in Arkansas, but like you got me thinking about this now. And like I am of the belief that part of the way we get a better understanding of where people are coming from is to actually understand where people are coming from, to actually sit down with people who think differently than we do and don't walk into every conversation with the presumption that we have all the answers, right? Like I, you know, I think we could use more of that right now in this country. And then finally, I mentioned three things. Maybe one of the two things I'm proudest of from my time in office was chairing something called the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress, which based on its names, sounds like the IT help desk, but it was
Right.
nicknamed the Fix Congress Committee. And we were tasked with trying to make Congress work better for the American people. And with very little press attention, other than you, very little fanfare, um, we passed over 200 recommendations, all of which were bipartisan, focused on making Congress work better. Everything from proposed reforms to the budget and appropriations process, issues related to staffing, to civility, to the rules of the House. And, what I'm proud of is not, and, at this point, about half of them have been implemented, another quarter in the process of being implemented, and the other quarter we got to get out of the parking garage. But I'm really proud that we showed that there was a different way to do things in Congress. And the number of people who've come up to me and colleagues who've said, like, how did you guys do that? And like, can you you know, give me some advice because I'd like to see if we can be more productive on my committee. That maybe that's the lasting legacy of that committee is not just what we got done in terms of recommendations, but how we got it done.
One of the things that people will always talk about when it comes to, especially this time, the end of the year, is how effective this Congress was. And they'll say, well, the 118th Congress was only able to do blankety, blankety, blank.
Sure.
But when you look at, and now it looks better too, because we're at the end of the year, so it's aggregated, but you go to your website, which is still active, at
Yeah.
least until the end of the month or so,
Yeah.
kilmer.house.gov, you see that through the work you and then your team, which I'll give you a chance to in a second, kind of give them some accolades. It looks like you're just on the cusp of $10 million saved or returned through casework here in the district. Over 1,500 people helped by your office. 83,000 correspondence had been responded to across the district, and then you've been at near 260 community events. I mean, when you look at perhaps the effectiveness of the Congress as a whole, your individual place in the sixth district, I mean, that shows leaps and bounds of good work given back to the community.
That's kind. And that's this 2 year period, right? I mean, if you aggregate that for the last 12 years, it's we're very busy and thankfully we're also very productive, right?
Hmm.
Which is there is a difference. Congress is very busy and it's not always very productive, but we've
Right.
really tried to figure out how to get wins for our constituents. The my casework team, and I'm glad you said I could shout them out. Sherry Williams, Chantel Munoz, and then we've had other folks who've been part of that casework team over the years. I could spend, the entire time we have together just talking about the work that they've done, right? Folks who are not getting their Social Security checks and like we go to work and help them get it. The work with the VA, small businesses who, sometimes the government isn't terrific to work with and like they don't pay on time. And so we, work on that. The IRS, you name it. We've got a team that's been just excellent at working with people and trying to get folks the help that they need.
One of the things that, you also think about is over the 12 years, the amount of citizens you represent increases. So, a couple 10, 20 years ago, perhaps it was one per 250,000 people. Now it's one per half a million. You as a representative
Yeah,
representing that
almost
many.
800,000. Yeah,
Is that
almost
what it is?
800,000 now. Yeah.
And so a lot of times those 800,000 people, if they aren't getting their benefits, they really don't know where to turn. They feel as though they've been forgotten by the government that, oftentimes is supposed to be there to help them. And as things get more and more automated, you're kind of in an endless loop of press four for this, press five for this, and you may not ever actually get to somebody.
Yeah.
But seeing these numbers and how you're able to talk to a real person and make those connections, I mean, you're changing not only lives, but perhaps generations of livelihoods for those families who are able to receive benefits or have their voice heard.
Yeah. I mean, there are things that are a congressional office can do that don't actually, I mean, we've passed legislation, but you can also have impact not just passing legislation, right? Like the work I told you about with the Forest Collaborative, I didn't have to, get a bill passed or signed by the president to do that. Like we just did it. The casework that we've been discussing is work that our office just chose to do to try to make government work better for people. The work we've done, with the Gorst Coalition, trying to fix the traffic problems at Gorst, is another great example of that, where we pulled together a community coalition and said, like, let's stop talking about this problem and let's start like actually getting a project on the map and getting funding for it and getting this bottleneck fixed. And all of those, that didn't require passing legislation. If you're down in Grace Harbor County, we've been able to fix, their biggest challenge is flooding, right? And Aberdeen and Hoquiam. And we've been able to get nearly $100 million into that community to start getting levees built and pulling some of those properties out of the floodplain. And when we do, what that will help with is unleashing housing development and economic development, and meaning that all that money that's currently going to pay for flood insurance can stay in people's pockets. And like that didn't take passing a bill. So I'm really proud of that work. And you've been at a lot of, I go out, the joke on our team was if there's more than 8 people at a gathering, Derek Kilmer will be there. And you've been at a lot of the things that I've shown up at, whether it be the Chamber of Commerce or, veterans pinnings or that type of thing. And every event where I get a microphone, I make a pitch for our casework team. And though I'm leaving office, I encourage folks to reach out to your elected representatives and ask for help if you need it, because when we show up at those events, it's to thank our community partners, to shine a bright light on cool stuff that's happened in our community, and to make sure that people feel like they have a closer relationship with their elected officials so that if they have an issue, they feel like they can call. That's it, right? Like, I mean, I don't need a photo op. I mean, every now and then we'll post on social media and, someone will get like, hey, nice photo op, you big jerk. And I'm like, I don't need a photo op, right? Like, the reason we're doing that is to try to make sure people know, one, that we value the work that's happening, whether it be by the Belfair Chamber, the North Mason Chamber, or the Shelton Chamber, or the Rotary Club, or the Kiwanis Club, or the Lions Club, or the the local church, or a lot, or visiting small businesses. We do that to say thanks, right? And then also to say, hey, if you need something, here's how we can help, right? Like, that's the reason to do it. And that's been, and I've been very lucky to have a team. I've been very fortunate to have a team that has that orientation to say, hey, this may be, like playing hockey against the world's toughest defense, but like, we're going to get pucks into the net for our constituents.
It's interesting you bring up the levees and the Aberdeen area. Last week I was emceeing, hosting the Regional Innovation and Economic Conference there, and Grays Harbor County, Lewis, Mason, Thurston, and Pacific counties are all there talking about things. And on the panel, I was facilitating with all the directors. I says, "Well, tell me some of the great things that are happening in the county." And that was brought up, the fact that the levee work, uh, the flooding levee work was happening, and the amount of money that was going to be saved by the residents and the businesses there along the waterways. They were so proud of that and just so excited that
Yeah.
that's finally coming through, and they were super stoked that that's happening. It's pretty cool.
And they've been awesome partners on it. And, that is another one of those examples, going back to your very first question, where you could spend, everybody could basically say, no, I want it done this way, and, I get to own it. And this is just an example of the community saying, like, we're going to check our personal agendas at the door and just try to get something done.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about personally what happens next after you're out of Congress. And I know that it's not necessarily, like you said, a reason because you're sick of it and you want to get out, but you sat down with the family and said, "What do you think? Should I run again? Should I not run again?" And kind of the consensus was, let's try something different. So what is that different?
Yeah. Well, and let me preface this answer by saying, like, I've really loved being able to work on behalf of our community. I will always be grateful to the people who've entrusted me with the responsibility of representing our community. And I took that responsibility seriously every single day, and I will take it seriously until I'm done in this role. I look at life in chapters, and this will be 20 years of elective office, which is a lot, right? Like, it
Hmm.
feels like a lot. And I don't feel like, this was not, I didn't intend for this to be my career. Um, and I did intend for it to be a chapter. And so, when we evaluated it, I sort of came to the conclusion that, like, hey, if I'm gonna have another chapter, I've got to start eventually. And um, I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. It's funny, like, I called my parents and said, "Hey, I'm going to announce that I'm not running again." And my mom said, "Well, what are you going to do next?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And she said, "You're leaving a job without another job lined up?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I am." And she's like, "Oh my," like, was very concerned about this. And
Sure.
so for the last year, I, had to allay her concerns that, I was going to find something. And, for me, it was important to find something where I felt like I could still make a difference. And so I've accepted a job with the Rockefeller Foundation. I'm gonna be their new senior vice president in charge of U.S. programs and policy. And I'm really excited about it. They've done work on economic opportunity primarily, is what they've done in the US, and that's obviously right in my sweet spot. They've done some work related to climate, and work related to democracy. And if you think about Congress like college, if I sort of double majored in economic opportunity and democracy, and I minored in climate and health. And so the overlap between the stuff that I work on and the stuff that the foundation works on is really good. And there's super smart people there, and they have resources where they can help communities around the country. And so that's my next thing. I'm excited about it. I'm hopeful for it, and I know that our community will continue to do good things with the spirit of partnership that they've had.
Tell me a little bit about the next person filling the role in the sixth, Emily Randall, right? She won the election and she'll be taking over your slot here in the sixth congressional. What can people expect from her and kind of the continuity of government, I guess, if you will?
For sure. Well, one, she's been an excellent state senator, and has been a good partner to our office on a bunch of stuff, including that Gorst project that I mentioned. So, she's someone who's worked well with our office, and and I know she just announced the hiring of her chief of staff and district director. And the district director that she hired is Katie Crabtree, who you may remember because she, was our deputy district director and worked Kitsap County and Mason County for my
Yeah.
team. And she's a terrific professional. I'm super impressed with Katie. She left our office to go work for the Navy and is now coming back into the congressional office world. So I feel like they're going to hit the ground running. And then, in that spirit of continuity, every member of my team is, we've sort of charged with, developing an exit memo, to make sure that Emily's team has whatever contacts, resources, information, including, candidly, we just gave her, I don't think she'd mind me sharing this, you know, the bills that we've introduced, uh, there's a lot of them that have specific focus on the sixth congressional district. And so part of that memo was saying, here are the bills that hopefully you'd be up for reintroducing, because, either, they're specific to this tribe or this locality or that type of thing. So that's something that we just handed off to her team within the last week.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, once again, as
But
we
she'll do
wrap,
she'll do great, and the district will be in great hands. And between her and our two senators, Senator Cantwell and Senator Murray have been, really focused on our region in a positive way too. So
well, that's wonderful, and that's good to hear. And as we wrap up here, I just want to again say it's been a wonderful talking with you, and just interacting with you on all the crazy things that we've done over these last couple of years. It's it's just wonderful to be able to reach out to you and your staff and get you on the horn when needed to answer any of the questions that are happening here in the sixth. And it's been really wonderful to see the growth of the sixth through the work that you and the team have done here representing it. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you more when you get to this new role. If there's any outreach that you have to do, you know how to get in touch with me and all that good stuff. So just
I
thank you so
appreciate
much.
that.
And it's been great talking with you.
Well, Jeff, thank you. Every now and then I find myself saying, well, no one in the press pays attention to this. And then I always have to catch myself and say, except for Jeff Slakey. And I want to thank, I want to thank your listeners too. there's nothing our office got done that didn't get done through partnerships, right? Like the electrical grid work with the PUD, right? Like that happened because the PUD helped make the case and we got it done. The funding that we got for infrastructure for housing for the Skokomish tribe, right? Like that happened because they were engaged working with our office. The Recompete coalition, the economic opportunity work that we've done. Every single thing we've done has happened because of partnership with the local community. And the fact that you've given this outlet for us to have dialogue with the local community. And oftentimes you and I will have a conversation, then we'll get a call from someone saying, like, I heard you talk about this. Hey, have you thought about this? Or, would you be willing to work with us on XYZ? That's really cool. And what you do is an extraordinary community service as well. So the gratitude goes right back to you and to the folks in the community who are listening. Thank you for the honor of representing you and for the honor of getting to visit with you on the air every now and then.
Yeah, for sure. And so, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays as we wrap up the year, and just best of luck as you move forward through the next chapter.
Thanks so much.
Very cool, Derek. It was awesome talking with you, and
You
I'll get
too.
this all cut up and it'll be online and ready to go.
Cool. Thanks again. Great to
All
see
right.
you.
Good to see you, buddy. Have a good one.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.